Charlie Krike was born in a small industrial town that never truly made its mark on the map, the kind of place where factory smoke blended with the morning fog and where ambition seemed like a foreign concept reserved for people in cities with glass towers and flashing billboards. His father was a machinist, a quiet man who worked long hours and came home with grease still under his fingernails no matter how hard he scrubbed. His mother was a school secretary, always balancing the family's budget on scraps of paper at the kitchen table, her patience worn thin by bills and the quiet resignation of a life that offered little more than survival. For Charlie, childhood was a mix of simplicity and tension. He played baseball in cracked parking lots, rode his bike down abandoned railway tracks, and dreamed of adventures beyond the monotony. But the backdrop of his life was heavy. His parents loved him, but their arguments about money and their unspoken frustrations filled the air like static. By the time Charlie was 12, he had already decided that he would not live and die in the same place like most of the people around him. He carried within himself a restless energy, a hunger for something undefined but urgent. As a teenager, Charlie struggled in school, not because he lacked intelligence but because he resisted authority. Teachers found him difficult, not because he was cruel, but because he constantly questioned their rules and mocked their routines. He had an irreverent sense of humor, the kind that could make his classmates laugh but could also draw the sternest reprimands. Yet there was something magnetic about him, even in his youth. He carried himself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, and he had a way of making others feel like he understood them in ways no one else did. That ability earned him both loyal friends and bitter enemies. He wasn't the smartest kid in class, nor the most athletic, but people noticed him, and for Charlie, that was everything. By 16, Charlie had developed a fascination with people who lived outside the law. He devoured books about infamous figures, rebels, and revolutionaries. He watched films about gangsters and soldiers, trying to understand what made them memorable. He admired their refusal to conform, their ability to carve out power in a world that tried to keep them small. But alongside this fascination came a growing resentment toward authority, the police who harassed his friends, the teachers who dismissed him, the local politicians who never cared about his community. Charlie began to see himself as someone meant to break free from invisible chains, someone destined to fight the system, though he didn't yet know how. When he turned 18, he left his town with little more than a backpack and a few crumpled bills in his pocket. He boarded a bus to the city, chasing an undefined dream of greatness. The city was brutal, a place of towering skyscrapers, endless traffic, and people too. Charlie Krike had built his life on instinct, charisma, and the ability to outmaneuver his rivals, but instinct is not always enough when enemies plot in silence. For years, he had been aware of the tension around him. He could feel it in the pauses of conversations, in the way some allies avoided his gaze, in the subtle shifts of power within the circles he had entered. At first, he dismissed these signals as paranoia, the natural price of rising too fast and standing out too much. But as the months passed, the signs became too clear to ignore. Something was moving against him, something coordinated, something larger than the rivalries he had survived in the past. It began with small betrayals. A deal he had carefully arranged fell apart at the last minute, sabotaged by someone feeding information to his enemies. A loyal associate vanished without explanation, only to resurface working for a rival faction. Rumors circulated about his supposed disloyalty, whispers designed to erode his credibility. Charlie fought back with the only weapons he had: charm, leverage, and the reputation he had spent years crafting. He confronted those who spread lies, cut off those who doubted him, and reminded his allies that siding against him came with consequences. But even as he tried to patch the cracks in his foundation, he sensed that the ground beneath him was shifting. Charlie's biggest strength had always been his ability to navigate between worlds, the street and the elite, the disenfranchised and the powerful. But that duality now became his greatest vulnerability. Neither side fully trusted him. The elites feared that he was too volatile, too unwilling to submit completely to their control. The streets resented that he had climbed into circles far removed from their struggles. He was seen as too polished for one world, too raw for the other. This isolation, subtle at first, grew heavier until Charlie realized he was standing in the middle of a battlefield with fewer allies than he had believed. At the same time, Charlie's inner conflict grew sharper. He had always told himself that his actions, however ruthless, were justified because he was different from the rest. He wasn't just another power-hungry man exploiting the weak, he was someone who wanted to change the rules of the game. But in the quiet hours of the night, when the city's noise faded and he was left alone with his thoughts, he began to question whether he was fooling himself. He remembered the faces of people who had trusted him, people he had manipulated or discarded when they no longer served his plans. He remembered the promises he had made, some broken, some forgotten. A gnawing sense of guilt tried to creep into him, but he pushed it down, convincing himself that regret was a luxury he couldn't afford. The breaking point came when he uncovered the depth of the conspiracy against him. It wasn't just one rival or one faction. It was a coalition, a quiet agreement among those who